Good evening, everyone.
Go ahead, Shanae. Sorry.
Good evening. Welcome to the Gray Area.
I'll start with prayer. God, please open my mind to new ideas, possibilities, and perspectives. Give me the ability to discern the truth. Help me to connect with others despite our differences. Lord, please don't let me lean on my own understanding. We invite you into this conversation. Have your way.
So I'll go right into the Gray Area introduction. Have you ever thought to yourself, what is God's perspective on my situation? Does it align with His? Introducing the Gray Area. The Gray Area is designed to challenge your thinking. Many times we don't realize it, but the way we're raised, the things our parents taught us, school, society, and experience all play a part in how we think and perceive things. Perception is everything. We're both mothers, wives, daughters, friends, ordinary women who love God. Yet our one goal, our one desire is to please Him, integrate His way and His perspective into their lives. This is not always easy, especially when we've been programmed to think a certain way. However, God has purposed us to challenge others on their very belief system. Does it align with His? We often try to see things black and white, wrong and right, good and bad, but this thing called grace and love does not always allow us to see things so simple. Everyday conversations, discussions, and situations through the lens of God is our prayer. We invite you to listen to our conversation and chime in. Perspective matters. So before we get started, we really want you guys to participate in tonight's conversation. You can simply hit *6 and you'll be placed in the queue, and we'll be able to take your call from there. So I'm going to go right ahead and set the table for tonight's conversation. And it was interesting because all last week I was bothered by something. I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with the news in Long Island, but there was an incident or actually a situation in which a high school student was stabbed and murdered, and he was actually murdered in front of a large group of students. And what was, to me, the most disturbing part about it was that all of these kids had their cell phones out. Everybody's recording. They're on Snapchat. And only, Tashora, you can help me out, I think only a few 911 calls were made reporting what was happening as the incident was occurring in live time. And, I don't know, it just bothered me so much. And not just that incident. I think there's many other incidents where, situations are happening. People are getting hurt, harmed, and as opposed to actually contacting authorities, people are like filming. And so that brings us to our question for tonight. Tashora, I'm not sure if you have the question, but I'm going to try to get this right. It is, are we lacking empathy in today's society? What's the solution?
Yeah.
And that's the question? Okay.
Yep.
And so I want to hear your perspective, but, I guess, why don't you take it away and I'll go.
All right. Well, I agree. I was also bothered. That was very disturbing for, that to happen, a 16-year-old young boy to actually be murdered in front of, they said between 50 and 70 of his peers. And they only received 7 911 phone calls, and there were a slew of videos and people that kind of students that actually, stood on the sidelines and videotaped. It is kind of scary. I think there were a few parents that came out afterwards that asked the questions like, almost defending. And I mean, I get it. I don't know the thought pattern, but, they were asking like, what should their child have done? And I don't think it's what their child should have done. It's more speaks to what your child actually did, So that whole piece of disconnecting with someone else that is hurting, that disconnect is what the problem is that we, kind of want to talk about tonight, because there's a huge disconnect. How can you can see, I mean, not even just hurt, but dying. expiring, as the police officer put it. Someone was actually dying right in front of your eyes, and you weren't even able to connect with that human being on any level. Is that, so that's the real issue that we're kind of speaking to. And it's almost like, what's happening? What has happened that our children are nowadays almost like coming up without the feeling of empathy, of, kind of relating to someone else's emotion without speaking? What happened? What's happening?
Yeah. I mean, I think in speaking to the empathy piece of just trying to wrap my head around how you could, like, watch someone hurt or suffer, like, like that whole humanistic piece. Like, are we desensitized as a culture to these things happening? Like you said, I don't know, it's just kind of like mind-blowing. I don't know how I could even watch. But I definitely have to recognize this is definitely a different generation. The culture is different, and I guess the question is, like, how did we get here? And we always have to point out how things are changing. Social media minimizes our level of interaction with one another. It's almost like everything around us kind of takes away from that interaction with people. You understand? Like, stores are closing, and they want people to shop online. You just think about it. There's less human interaction in that. Yep. Our whole culture is kind of like set up for us to not interact in the same way that we probably interacted years ago. So I definitely want to say that it's cultural, but just because it's cultural, what can we do? Do we accept it? Because I just think it's horrible. I think that it's totally horrible now that we are allowing things. This is not just one incident. I mean, this is happening like almost everywhere. Everyone, anytime anything happens, at least 10 people have the footage on their phone. And just the thought of being able to the mindset is like automatically pull out your phone. Like, I feel like, for me, my automatic response is call 911. People's automatic response literally is not 911. It's to record. It's not 911. It's not to get help. It's really to record. So many other incidents have happened of people either gotten really hurt or lost their lives because people are not calling for help. They're recording.
You see, that I think we have to, like, identify, I guess, a few of the problems. And you said a few really interesting things. I think the recording piece, first of all, you talked about technology. Technology is huge. There is, like you said, less human interaction. And I think in order for us to kind of, have empathy, I think it's another emotion thing that we have to exercise and practice in order to build. And if these children are starting from young behind a phone screen, or iPad screen or a computer screen, and they are kind of communicating through that using emojis, you can't really tell how somebody's feeling. So it's like, that's one thing, so you can't even identify with that emotion because you've never seen it actually before, or it doesn't happen often. So you can't even differentiate what somebody's going through based on a facial expression because they're kind of hiding behind, you're communicating through a screen. So I think that's one major, major problem. I think that pick up the phone and videotape before you call 911. I really think everybody's in this mindset of, that's, I think, a social media. This is just my thing, is people are they're willing to do anything for likes now, and being a celebrity and being noticed, and because it was crazy that the family of that victim, that young man, they saw it on Snapchat before they heard that, before the police told them, and
wow.
that is just wow. So horrific. For a mother to see her child or a sibling to see their brother or sister on murder on Snapchat, So I think that whole, thing of being liked and, people following them, I think that lends to it as well. So I just think there are so many pieces that we can kind of look at to why children are now becoming detached, And there was before I'm going to let you see, but there was a thing I just want to mention that I saw today. I didn't really get to do much, but I saw a quick statistic and a correlation with technology and empathy, and how the college students that came in school after the year of 2000 are 40% less empathetic than those that came in previously. And there's a correlation because that's when the whole technology, internet boom really, really started. And there has been a 40% decline in students' level of empathy in college. I think that's like so crazy.
That
so
is
crazy.
40% decline. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are some things.
So what do we do? What do we just accept, that this is where things are going? I mean, I was really, really bothered that this is how things, because I think that could have been anyone's child,
Yeah.
Is it something that more parents can do? I work in a preschool, and I know a big part of what we teach as part of our curriculum is social-emotional learning, because we recognize that, in order to have stable human beings or stable citizens, the foundation of being empathetic and being able to self-regulate, all of those things are super important. So I mean, from a academic level, there are some people that recognize that it's important. I'm trying to figure out what else can be done, what's the disconnect, because I'm all about what can we do as as individuals to kind of change this.
I think parents are a big solution to this. I think just having these kind of conversation and building awareness. I think the fact that the kids nowadays, and I was just thinking about it, today, how just regular playtime, the interaction with your neighbor, or your as a child, you're outside playing double dutch or hopscotch or whatever, and you're getting to meet the people on your block, the other kids on the block that you go to school with or whatever, and just that playtime. You don't even see kids outside anymore just playing. So,
that's so true.
Riding that bike, falling, my friend helping me up, getting my knee fixed, we having conversations about my pain. None of that is happening anymore. So, that bond, and like I said, I think it's something that you have to kind of, I think we're pre-wired for it. I think we all have that bone in us still. But if it's not exercised or practiced, then the level, I think, is definitely going to decrease. So that, I think, I don't know. I just think parents on a whole, there's some awareness, because nowadays it's so busy. We don't even have time to, cook and relax with our family and just have, family time. So parents are giving the kids the iPads and the phone, and and I could be guilty at times with it too, but I'm very conscious because I think it's necessary for them to focus on what's important. But definitely playtime. The playtime for me, I mean, they don't play outside as much as I used to.
They don't. They really, really don't. I mean, even my kids, it's go outside and play after hear groans and moans about how long they're outside.
That's so true.
I mean, it is our responsibility. I think parents have a responsibility, certainly. But like you said, there's no emphasis on playing. I remember playing outside literally all day.
Yeah, me too.
It was just different. And even when I lived, with my grandmother, the kids, they were told that they have to play outside. That's what you do when you come in, you eat dinner and things like that. So definitely a shift in people's mindset and their perspective of how they see things.
Yeah, nobody even want to come inside. You remember that?
You would get upset. You would hate that it got dark or the street lights would come on. It would be really upsetting.
But those are some things that we learned back then. Those are some things that we learned by just human interaction, by building relationships and knowing when your friend was down or something was happening with your friend, and you could identify it just based on an expression, based on the way that person's face looked. You didn't need to have like a word exchange or anything like that, but we were able to identify and relate to that person because, we were down, so it's like those things are, I think those things are missing. And I think, again, the conversation and opening the conversation with parents are, I think it's just very, very, very critical right now because, like we said, our kids are just losing that. Kids are sitting right next to each other, texting each other. You know, they're not even interacting with each other on a physical level. They're doing it through a screen, and they're sitting right next to each other. So that's I think true.
That is so true in terms of the level of interaction. You could literally be sitting right next to someone and engaging in conversation. And also it's just like I'm not a phone person, but like nowadays texting is like people actually prefer texting over a phone call. Like, and I'm like so old school because I actually want to hear the person's voice. Like, it's so different. Nowadays people are like, just text me. And I think that when you text, that's why I try not to text, especially like serious things. You can misconstrue. It's difficult to kind of read how that person's feeling. So there's definitely, I feel like a lot more people actually prefer texting than being on the phone.
I mean, texting can be convenient because, sometimes, if you don't answer the person right away, then you could see it later and kind of respond. But definitely the hearing the person's voice, I think, is very, very, very important.
Yeah.
So what do you think Heaven's perspective is on this thing? Like how, I mean,
that's a good question.
I was thinking because, it's just so crazy. I was sitting here and I'm like, there has to be something in the Bible that says like you can't sit, just willy-nilly by and watch your friend just die, like, and I was like, I literally Googled like don't sit casually by or idly by and watch your friend die or suffer or whatever, and I put Bible, and believe it or not, Leviticus 19:16 says, do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I am the Lord. So I was like, okay, God, that's how you feel about it. It's just like you can't, it's or not even like idly by is like some of those kids were saying, and some of the parents was like, well, I don't want them engaging in a fight. Well, get help. Run to get help. Run to get 911. Call a neighbor. Run and don't sit idly by.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there and watch or videotape while somebody is is dying. That's what that's what that verse is saying. Your brother's hurt. Something's happening. Get help. It's at the very least. Get help. Run to get help. We have someone in the queue.
I just wanted to say one of the scriptures. One of the ones that I found in terms of Heaven's perspective is Romans 12:15. It says, rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with them that weep. So, I interpret that as, when others are up on the up and up, we should be happy for them. But if you see someone hurting, like, you should be hurting too. Like that's your brother,
Yeah.
But let's let the caller in.
Okay. Hi, caller.
Good evening, caller.
Hello, guys. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what was discussed earlier as far as like empathy. I think it's definitely something that we're lacking in society, especially with today's generation. I think it's just an incessant need to be first, the first to post, the first to get acknowledgement of a situation, whether it's good or bad. It's the need to be first, that everybody can recognize you as a person who saw this first, recorded it first, posted it first, and it's just really sad that a young man lost his life and people stood by and not even calling 911. I always put myself in a perspective that if it was me or somebody that I cared about, the least you can do is call 911, go and get help.
Yes.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a sad case. It was a heavy situation. I mean, yeah, but you're right. We've become, I think the kids are just so, they want that recognition, They want that recognition of being, to get that like or that whatever, that I was first. I put the info out first, so you get some type of recognition from that. And that's
maybe clout, as some people would call it.
Yep. You get clout. Wow.
Thank you, caller. I think that's that's definitely something to consider, that people are looking for clout, but why? At what expense? Right. That piece too is disturbing. Like, you're going to be known for the person that posted a murder. Like, like, how do you glorify that? How is that, I don't know how that is helpful. So it's, so going back to a few things that I wanted to say, because we were talking about scriptures, there was another one, well, the one that I read I really liked the most, but there was something else that I feel like was pertaining, and when I find it again, I'll read it. But, I guess what I want to say as we go to our closing remarks and our challenge is that, we really have to continue these conversations. I always talk to you, Tashora, about we have the power to make change. I don't know if people really understand that. It can be small change, big change, just by having conversations. It could be just talking to your children, your godchildren, your sisters, your brothers about the situation. Ask them what they think. See what their thoughts are. And, if they don't understand it's wrong, you should explain to them why it's wrong. I think that we shouldn't allow this incident to kind of go as is. We really need to take a stand and start having these conversations with our young people. And I think that parents have a responsibility. I think the schools have a responsibility. I think that the schools have done a lot in terms of trying to integrate character education, but I think that more needs to be done on a school level, without holding up the conversation, just wondering if there should be some accountability legally, for people that kind of are you an accessory to a murder if you're literally standing there watching someone get murdered? You know what I mean? So I don't know if this is going to take a turn legally, but these are all things to be considered, and just to have conversations about. What are your thoughts as we close out?
I think that sometimes for those things it needs to be consequences for the action. I was going to say, I think a hostage probably needs to be taken, so that people can take it real seriously. You can't just sit idly by and watch your neighbor suffer. You can't do that. That's just not, but I guess what is coming across right now to me in my heart is that, luckily God created us, and I believe that He hardwired us all with that ability. And I think that's what makes us different from any other species, any other thing on the planet. We have it. We have it. It just needs to be exercised. And I think we all need to take stock and be aware of what's happening. We can't just let things slide because it just gets worse and worse and worse. And we don't realize that we could actually really be changed. We could be the change that we want to. So let's just try, even in the smallest way, even if it's just, talking to our kids and letting them know, or putting a time limit on the iPads, or, whatever we need to do to let them, maybe encourage more play dates or outdoor times or going outside with them. I don't know, but I think something has to be it's not just going to happen. We have to be engaged and actively participating in making a change, just like you said. So,
I think that one of the biggest examples is the See Something, Say Something movement, which is something that MTA started. I think it was created right after the 9/11, as they were trying to crack down on, terroristic threats, and they came out with this campaign, and they just started saying, like, the commercials, if you see something, say something, and that was something that stuck. And believe it or not, people are mindful of that. When they're on the train, they report things, and, I just think that it is possible for us to kind of shift the culture. I mean, we don't have to accept this to be our culture, but it definitely requires more conversation and more people willing to shift the culture. So, I hope that tonight's conversation was thought-provoking. This is for some reason, this incident holds dear to my heart. My heart goes out to the family and to the, my heart just goes out to the family. I just think it was senseless. But nevertheless, I think that we should find it within ourselves to do something about it. Like I said, whether it's on a small level or a large level, I think that we owe it, to ourselves, to our children, and to the victim's family to kind of push, if we can.
We do. Sure. We have somebody in the queue, so let's let them in, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Hi, caller. Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
How you doing? This is Jay from Queens. Just wanted to just talk on the situation. When I think about what's happening in the culture and the climate of where we are as far as connectivity, people don't understand the power that we have, and I look at it like we've misplaced relevancy or being current with the ability to affect change. So, where in a previous generation, when they didn't like things, they would go and protest, and they would, do sit-ins and walk-ins, and now we just, go to our social media and voice our opinion. And there is a power in that, but it also limits us because we didn't really affect change. We may have created a conversation, but has that conversation has that conversation given us room to now affect the change? Because with the younger generation, it brings relevancy to be able to share these videos and bring this content out, because content is important. But in that content, is that content changing our generation to the point where now it's creating an impact to be more aware?
That's yep, and that's the important part. Yeah, and that's not happening as much as we'd like it.
And I don't think that we understand that we have an authority and a power to be able to create change by involving people who can bring change immediately. Like, most people don't think about coming to the police unless something personally affects them, because they don't see how it makes sense outside of their own. Outside
of their own self.
Yeah.
That's so true.
It's very true.
I'm hoping from this it's a lesson of how we can get more involved with the police and, have these conversations. I truly think that we may have to hold people accountable. I don't know if that's possible, but I definitely think that it's something to be considered.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Paula. That was great. All right, well, that was really good. That was a really good conversation. I'm thinking about how I can change, how can we move forward and make things better, because it has to change. So I'm hoping everybody's feeling the same way.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please follow us on our social media platforms, Great Area Conversation on Facebook and the Great Area Conversation on Instagram. You can also email us at Gmail, thegreatareaconversation@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or even just suggestions for upcoming topics that you might want to be a part of for our discussions. We look forward for you joining us for next week, Wednesday at 9:30. Please invite someone and tell them about the Great Area. Thank you again, and have a good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Have a good evening, everyone.
My God. Ready? Oh. Ready? What's a mess? Spread you. Sorry. So you're gonna need glasses and all of that too.